we got to do the Diddy trial. I'm going to play some sound bites from the prosecution's closing. The way I'm able to do that is one of my favorite Twitter accounts for staying up on Diddy trial news is at Diddy Trial Daily. I don't know who's behind it, but he's doing a great job. And so at Diddy Trial Daily voiced 22 minutes of the prosecution's 5-hour closing argument and kind of brought us in. Now we can see the transcripts ourselves, but it's always nice to have somebody reading it and kind of bring it to life. So when we play sound bites from the prosecution's closing argument, which was done by a woman, not by this guy who's a man, but in any event, you'll hear these excerpts. It's just from this guy on the internet who I follow, who's been following the case very closely. Okay, here are, I'm just going to go through it, Maureen, some of these. Here's what the prosecution said. I got to put on my little reading glasses, my writing. Would you look at my writing? It's really terrible. I don't know if you can see this, but it's terrible.
Mine is way worse. I've seen it. Mine's way worse.
It looks like a stenographer, only without the clever, clues for shortening words. Okay. The prosecutor says, first of all, this guy led a criminal organization and said, look at 2 incidents, just to keep this in your head. March 2016, the Intercontinental, when he beat her, and we all saw the tape. 2024, when he choked and hit Jane, the next girlfriend, the most recent girlfriend, as she tried to escape. He beat the hell out of her and then made her do a hotel night, a night of debauchery or a freak-off night, whatever. Time and time again, they talked about how with Jane in particular, she would beg him to just have a normal relationship, to show her any sort of normal affection, saying, I'm not an animal. I'm not a porn star. I just want to have a normal relationship with you. And he'd say, okay. And he'd say, we're going to go out to dinner. And they'd show that he had ordered the sex worker as soon as he hung up with her. And after he beat her, he called a sex worker. After she was crying, after 2 sex partners at one of these freak-offs or hotel nights, she threw up, said, I can't do this. And he said, you get back out there. You got to do number 3. And she, that's what the prosecution's starting with. You remember, just to kick it off, 2016 Hotel Intercontinental in LA, what happened to Cassie when she tried to leave a freak-off and he got beaten up in front of our very eyes on that tape. 2024, he choked and hit Jane as she tried to escape because he was determined to watch her do what he wanted to watch her do. They talked about how this is, hold on, I gotta put my glasses back on. They said he relied on his wealth and his power to place himself above the law, and his staff helped him. It was a Combs enterprise, and it existed to serve him. He named the names within the enterprise, KK, his sort of chief of staff, and others who helped trap the women, supplied cash and drugs across state lines. That alone is sufficient, they said, to get him on racketeering. And they said he himself engaged in, purchased, funneled drugs. He's guilty of kidnapping, of arson, of bribery, of sex trafficking of both Cassandra and Jane. He forced them into labor, those women, into doing this, and also one of his other staffers who he kidnapped and brought over to Kid Cudi's. He said he engaged in travel for commercial sex, meaning he hired sex workers. The drug distribution was critical to the freak-offs, and many helped get the drugs to Cassie Ventura and to Jane at every freak-off. Capricorn Clark is the woman who he kidnapped and brought with him to Kid Cudi's. And also she testified that, we talked about this last time you were on, Maureen, she's the one who says she was kidnapped by so-called Uncle Paulie, who worked for Diddy, dragged to some building in Manhattan, and maybe we didn't talk about this. Maybe I'm just thinking about you talking about on The Nerve and me talking about here. Anyway, dragged there and given a lie detector test for 5 days to see if she stole some jewels from Sean Combs. And they're thinking, look, this is not legal. You can't do this. They talked about the kidnapping, and they talked about Kid Cudi in a part that was very interesting. Here's, again, our friend at Diddy Daily reading the part about Kid Cudi.
In January of 2012, Combs orchestrated this whole arson on Kid Cudi's car. A hole was cut in the roof, and a Molotov cocktail was dropped in. And we know it was Mr. Combs because voice notes captured Combs' threats to blow up the car. And Cudi had no other conflicts except for with Combs. And then D-Rock later brought Cudi to Combs, where Combs apologized, so we know that was him.
Okay, so that was the Kid Cudi thing. Then I'm just going to play one other soundbite, and I'll bring you in, Maureen, on it. They talked about Jane, the other key witness, and how she wrote to him saying, I don't want to do this. Like I said, I'm not an animal, and I'm not into this at all. Like, I want a real relationship. I don't want to just be used as your circus animal. And how he responded to her, I'm about to disappear on you. You get on your job. Here's that. It's out. Again, read by Diddy Daily.
Jane's case began with love bombing. She was smitten. There were trips to the Caribbean. Dr. Hughes calls this love bombing stage a grooming tactic. Combs gave Jane ecstasy. It caused her convulsions. He made her put baby oil all over herself. He made her wear lingerie. He loved red lights. In May of 2021, high and eager to please, Jane joined a freakoff with an escort. Initially, she was excited, but she didn't see it dominating her life and the relationship. She texted Sean her desire to stop, wanting non-activity hotels, but Combs ignored her. He was serving his desires. He would dictate how long they would last. He would make her request nude photos from male escorts for his benefit. When she would ask to use a condom, he would be condescending. When she would try to speed up, he would make her slow down. He dangled gifts and money and unfulfilled promises in front of her. You saw texts where Jane wrote, I don't want you to use me to fulfill your freaky, wild desires in hotel rooms. He'd write back saying, look at the roof over your head and your pretty mouth and teeth, leveraging the rent that he had paid and the veneers that he had paid for. For an all-star party, he demanded she had sex with 3 men. She sent pictures of period blood to resist. In a voice note, you heard him say, I'm about to really disappear on you. I don't have time for this. You got me on my job, now you get on your job.
Maureen, devastating.
That is so brutal. That note about the period as just trying any means necessary to get this guy off of her metaphorical neck for a minute. You know, I'm so grateful that the Cassie video is out there in the world.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think without that video, the defense would have had a much easier time convincing, again, a very sophisticated, hardened jury that this is nothing more than lovers' spats over one partner's sexual preferences. And, you know, a fetishization of baby oil that frankly is Warholian. But I think I'll be shocked if he's not found guilty. I'll be shocked. You know, I remember talking to you about this last time I was with you, and I asked you as a lawyer, when he went after Cassie, when she was trying to run out of that hotel room at that elevator bank, and he grabbed her and threw her to the floor and dragged her back to that room, does that legally constitute kidnapping? And you said yes, without hesitation. How can they not find him guilty of at least that count?
And they're arguing. See, I think part of the problem people have in understanding this case is the misunderstanding of what sex trafficking is. Racketeering, that's a whole other thing, but they're trying to show he's like a crime boss with all these people who work for him, who are enforcing his orders to commit crimes. And it's like, I guess we just sort of roll our eyes and say like, oh, he's a rocker, like he's a music mogul. They all do drugs. Well, you know what? It's still illegal. They all use prostitutes. Okay, it's still illegal. They all have guns. Well, it may or may not be illegal, depending on the nature of the gun and its use. They don't all commit arson or kidnap or brutally batter repeated women. They don't bribe hotel security guards to hide tapes of their beatings. They don't allegedly go to nightclubs and shoot somebody in the face. He denies that. Somebody else was found guilty for it, but that man claims that Diddy actually did it. Okay, in any event, what the prosecution is showing is this has gone so far beyond like mild law breaking, for lack of a better term, that you might even assume your average rap mogul has engaged in. It's just so far beyond. And on the sex trafficking, they have to show that these women were sort of forced, not sort of, that they were forced to perform sex at these hotel nights or debauchery nights or freak-offs without their consent. And the prosecution pointed out, it's not a problem for us if they consented to some. We only have to show that there was one that they didn't consent to. And by the way, mid freak-off, you can withdraw your consent. And if he continues to force you from that point forward, he's guilty. And the sex trafficking, yes, it can happen where like there's an international ring and they kidnap young girls and they force them to perform sexual, behavior for creepy old men. That's a form of it. But I learned this when I went over to NBC and did, a lot different kind of segments, softer segments, the only upside of NBC. Sex trafficking in America looks very different. And what happens in a lot of cases is you'll have online dating where the girl shows up ready to date somebody she met online, and she finds out while she's in his car driving to their dinner, he knows about her 3-year-old son because he did his homework on her. And he brings her to a hotel and says, you're going to go in there and you're going to screw these next 3 guys or your son gets it. That is absolutely sex trafficking, forcing someone to perform a sexual act by force or threat. And so that's how you have to understand the Diddy case. They're saying these women were threatened with their livelihoods, which he controlled, with embarrassment because he'd already gotten them on camera performing these things when they still thought they loved him and he loved them, with professional embarrassment, with a beatdown, another physical beatdown, which both of them had testified he served them multiple times, and so on. And so like that they were no more free to say no to those freak-offs than this woman who was, by the way, it's a real case that I just outlined, whose son was under threat if she didn't go through with suddenly becoming a forced prostitute.
I mean, I think the evidence is overwhelming. I would like to think, again, post-Harvey, that there's been a much more nuanced understanding of what constitutes a victim of rape, sexual abuse, and or sex trafficking. To your point, it's the same with rape, right? Your husband can rape you.
Yep.
That marital rape, I think, is a relatively new statute on the books. Am I correct?
It's been around for decades, but there was a time in this country, like around the 1950s, where you could not rape your wife legally.
Yeah, that to me feels like the blink of an eye, The Diddy thing, what I wonder, how much do you think, because human beings are human beings, that emotionality is going to play into this verdict? Because there were multiple reports that the times that the jury was forced to watch those videos of the freak-offs, that at least half of them looked visibly ill.
I think the jury's going to do the right thing, and that's a conviction. I actually think he's going to be convicted on all 3 counts: racketeering, forced sex trafficking, and obviously the traffic or the transport of sex workers across state lines. That one they just should have pleaded guilty to, because it's just, they have him dead to rights. The only defense to that, it was offered in the defense's opening where they suggested they weren't coming for sex. He wanted to talk about like their feelings. He wanted them to come for like emotional support. Like I was like, would you just admit that one, okay? In any event, he's definitely going down. If he doesn't go down on that, it's total jury nullification. That's kind of the one that will show us whether this jury was just enamored with his fame and fortune and power. If he's found not guilty on the traveling people for sex trafficking or for prostitution, because he very clearly did that, there's really no defense. But I think he's going to be found guilty on all 3 of the charges. And what's happening now is kind of interesting because you've got Agnifilo. He's the lead defense counsel up there doing his closing. And Agnifilo, again, just as a reminder for the audience, represented the NXIVM cult founder, Keith Raniere, from my hometown. We're known for more than this, Albany, New York.
Well, 2 stars out of there.
Yeah, right, 2 stars. It failed. He did this same thing that he's doing now with this jury, which is like, oh, this is utter nonsense. I'm looking for my papers on him. Oh, this is utter nonsense. Oh, this is bullshit. Here it is. You're smarter than that. And the jury was like, we are smart and we see right through you. But here's some highlights of his defense. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's talk about who Sean Combs really is. He's a self-made Black entrepreneur. Had to get that in there, Maureen. A visionary. A man who built real businesses so successful and groundbreaking that major players chose to partner with him. Don't take my word for it. Derek Ferguson told you that himself. He was a witness. You think it's easy to be Sean Combs? It's not. How many witnesses sat in that chair and admitted they were pushed, challenged, even changed by him? Those assistants, they said it felt like Harvard Business School. They were pushed so hard. Did they like it? No. But did they grow from it? Absolutely. They didn't always like him, but let's be honest, they loved him, even the ones suing him today. Now, by the way, all of that, I could actually say that about my team. I think I pushed my staff to the point where it's like a Harvard Business School education, and that maybe they don't always like it, but they grow from it. But I didn't actually ask them to like give me drugs or clean up after my sex romps, or I didn't kidnap them and subject them to lie detector tests. I didn't bring them with me for a kidnapping or an arson against somebody else. I don't force them to get my drugs. It's a long list. We are days away from what has been dubbed by some the Rio Reset, what some worry could be a threat to the US dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, BRICS nations, that's Russia, China, India, and Iran, and some more, are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the US dollar, thus cratering, its value. Some report that they've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the US dollar and US bonds in favor of gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? One option is to diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word MK letters to 989898. July 6th could mark a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.